My story takes place in 1999, and I was 10 years old. We lived in a small town in Pennsylvania where everyone knew each other and nothing ever really happened. Most of what I remember was weekends at the mall, riding my bike around the neighborhood until dark, and the occasional weekend dinner at McDonald's with my family. That was always a treat and something we only did once in a while, usually on a Friday or Saturday night. It was one of these nights at McDonald's, of all places, that I had an absolutely bizarre encounter. My mom and dad and my younger sister and I all piled into our minivan and drove to McDonald's. It wasn't a huge one, just a normal McDonald's with the bright yellow arches out front, a single drive-through, and the indoor play area, which was my favorite part. We went in and ordered our food. I got my usual Happy Meal with chicken nuggets and fries, and we sat in a booth near the play area. That was the first time I noticed something weird. Right across from us, there was this family sitting in another booth, and everything about them just seemed off. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but they weren't like other families and people that were in there, and didn't really look like they belonged in a McDonald's. There were two parents, both of them very pale with dark hair, and one daughter who looked about my age. I think the first thing I noticed was how they were barely talking to each other. They were just sitting there, eating their food very quietly and looking around occasionally. Even the way they moved seemed weird to me. It almost looked synchronized, or like they were overly aware of how they were supposed to act in a place like that. Whatever it was, it just stood out to me. I kept trying to watch them without outright staring and trying not to be too obvious, and that's when I noticed that their daughter kept looking at me too. Every time I glanced over at their table, she was already staring at me. The weird part was that you'd think she'd look away right when I looked at her, but she would keep looking at me like she didn't care if I noticed. I remember feeling uncomfortable about it, but I tried to ignore it. I just ate my food and talked to my parents, but I couldn't stop thinking about how they were all acting. After we finished eating, I headed to the play area with my sister for my usual half hour of playtime. I had already forgotten about the family. I took off my shoes and ran in. There were a few other kids in there climbing through the tunnels and sliding down the slide. I left my sister and started playing, but almost immediately I noticed that girl from the other family had come in there too. She wasn't playing or sliding or doing anything. She was just standing near one of the tubes and watching me. She would look off and watch some of the other kids too, but she was mostly focused on me and was just standing there with her hands at her sides. I tried to ignore her, but after a while it got too weird and I didn't want to be in there anymore. I climbed out, put my shoes back on, and told my parents I had to use the bathroom before we left. My dad nodded and told me to hurry up, then started cleaning our table off. I went into the bathroom, which was completely empty, and went into one of the two stalls. Not even a minute later, I heard the bathroom door open and someone walked in. I could hear them go directly to the sink, then heard the water running like they were washing their hands. When I finished, I came out of the stall, and right there, standing at the sink, was the girl from that family. She was washing her hands, but as soon as I walked out, she turned directly at me and said hello. I just kind of froze there for a second, then blurted out, "Why are you in here? This is the boys' bathroom." She didn't seem at all embarrassed or caught off guard. She just calmly told me that she wasn't a girl. I'm going to quote this next part because it's so weird. Then this person, whoever she or he was, said, "I'm supposed to be a boy." That sentence sent a chill through me. Not because this boy that I thought was a girl said it, it was the way he said it, the part where he said "supposed to be." I had no idea what that even meant, and it was probably the weirdest thing anyone had ever said to me at that age. I didn't say anything for a second, but I didn't want to be rude, so I was getting ready to apologize for thinking he was a girl when he started asking me questions. They were all right in a row, like, "What's it like living here? What grade are you in? And how long have you lived in this town?" I answered every question trying to be nice, but I was feeling more and more uncomfortable. Then he asked something that was so random and caught me completely off guard. He said to me, "Do you think we're the only ones in our galaxy?" I remember just staring at him, not even knowing how to answer that. All I really wanted to do was get out of the bathroom. I don't even remember what I said exactly, but mumbled something like, "I don't know," then said I had to go because my parents were waiting for me. I didn't even wash my hands and had to walk around him to get to the door. Then as I was opening the door to leave, he looked directly at me and two things happened simultaneously that are forever burned into my memory. As he turned his head toward me, the fluorescent lights cast this shadow down on his face, and I swear to God, the half that wasn't being lit directly was a different face. It's so hard for me to describe this when I tell the story, but it was almost like there was something else underneath that I just caught a glimpse of as his head was turning, and it looked gray and featureless and had no nose. I don't even like to use this word, but it really looked alien-like, and it was terrifying. The second thing that happened at the exact same moment was what he said to me as I was walking out. He said, "It was really nice to finally meet you." I must have looked crazy because I bolted out of the bathroom and went straight to my parents, who were standing by the front doors and ready to leave. I literally ran through them and out the doors and out to our car, yanking open the door and jumping in. My parents and my sister followed, probably confused by what I'd just done. Then my mom got in the van and asked me what that was all about. I just said that there was someone weird in the bathroom. I think my dad was the most concerned, thinking it was some weird adult man, but I told them it was another kid, and they kind of shrugged it off after that. We drove out of the parking lot and that was it. I didn't look out of the window to see if I could see the kid again or anything. We just left and I never talked about it again. That was 20-something years ago now, but I still remember it perfectly. I've never stopped thinking about it, and I've spent years wondering who that family actually was and what actually happened, but I have no clue. Since then, I've read a few theories that resonate with me. Some people believe aliens live among us and that they disguise themselves and we never even notice. I get how ridiculous that might sound, but maybe that's what I saw. Everything about that family was so weird, and the face I saw underneath the kid's normal face was 100% real. It actually happened. It wasn't just weird lighting or me seeing things. What I saw was truly traumatic for me. I know that no matter how much time passes, I'll never forget that day and what I saw. If I'm being totally honest, I feel like somehow I saw something that I wasn't supposed to see. When I was very young, around 3 or 4 years old, I had an imaginary friend. Unlike most children who describe their imaginary friends in vivid detail, I couldn't describe her physical appearance. I never saw her in the traditional sense, but I knew she existed, and I always told my parents that she lived in space. My mom has told me that one night, she and my grandmother asked me to show them where my friend lived. I guess I walked into the bathroom, stood by the window, and pointed up at the night sky. I know I was young, but I distinctly remember pointing to a specific cluster of stars and saying the word Pleiades. My mom says that I told them that's where my friend was from and that her home goes around one of the suns. It wasn't something you'd expect to hear from such a young child, and my mom and grandmother have told me they were both taken aback by it. At some point after that, they had checked to see if the constellation I had named was real, and sure enough, Pleiades is a real thing. They had no idea where I could have heard that name or learned where in the sky it was, especially since I hadn't even started any kind of school yet. At that age, I was home most of the day, and I would watch TV, but it was all kids' shows and nothing scientific. There was no reason I should have known about Pleiades. A few months after that, my mom told me that her and her mom had heard me in my room talking to my friend, and again asked me to show them where my friend was from. This time when I showed them, they were both shocked because I went into a different room and pointed out of a different window, but still pointed to the same place in the sky. My mom said she'll never forget that moment because I was pointing to the same constellation in the sky. It had just been in a different place that night. That meant that somehow I understood, even at that young age, that the Earth's rotation had changed where Pleiades was. There is no way I should have had that level of awareness. That time they asked me what my friend's name was, and this is a name that I still remember clearly, but I guess I instantly told them that it was Katzawan. They were impressed that I had come up with such a unique name, but mostly dismissed the whole thing as an overactive imagination. Over time, the visits from my imaginary friend slowed down, and by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, she was no longer a part of my life. My family chalked it up to childhood fantasy, and I moved on, assuming it had all been in my head. Years passed and I didn't think much about it. Then when I turned 18, I had the first of what would later become several unexplained sightings. One night, along with a group of friends, I witnessed a large, white, nearly translucent craft moving silently across the sky. It somewhat blended with the clouds in the sky, but was clearly there and all of us saw it. We watched it maneuver in ways that no conventional aircraft could ever do, shifting directions effortlessly without any visible propulsion system or contrail behind it. This was well before drones were available, so that wasn't even a thought when we all started talking about it. Whatever we saw that night wasn't something I've ever been able to explain. A few years after that, I was taking a walk with my great aunt on this tree-lined path near her house when we saw another unusual craft. This time it had a definite triangular shape and was flying very low. We both clearly heard it emit this heavy, rumbling sound that resonated in the air and all around us. Then, in less than a second, it vanished. One moment it was there, and the next it was gone, like it had just passed through to another dimension. This sighting is something the two of us still talk about regularly. As I got older, the sightings continued. Shortly after I turned 30, I was outside with my husband when we saw something hovering high above our house. This wasn't just once, it happened 2 times, and even though it was way up in the sky, it seemed to be directly over our house. The object had lights on it and it remained stationary for some time, then took off unlike any aircraft I've ever seen. On one of the 2 sightings, I downloaded and used this plane tracking app that identifies planes, satellites, and other known aerial objects, but there was nothing even close to our location in any direction. According to the app, the sky should have been empty above our house. For context, I have lived my entire life in a remote town in the province of Quebec in Canada. Out where I live, we don't have much air traffic and the sky is almost always dark and clear, making anything unusual stand out even more. I don't know if all these events are connected somehow to my experiences as a child and my imaginary friend, but I can't help putting them together. I guess I've always felt like I'm being watched in a way. I don't even like to put it like that though, so maybe someone or something is keeping track of me. All of these experiences have led me down a path of seeking answers. Even today, I'm studying other people's stories and sightings and trying to find similarities to my own experiences. There are times when I feel isolated and even crazy because of it. It's hard to talk about these things when so many people will just outright dismiss them, but I know what I've seen and I know what happened to me as a child. Whether it was real in a tangible sense or something beyond my understanding, I don't have the answers yet. I guess I can only hope that one day I will. As a longtime Buddhist, I like to take retreats whenever I can, usually about once every 3 or 4 months, and for a weekend or more at a time. This was the case last year when I decided to take a retreat along the eastern seaboard of the United States at a Dharma center. When I'm on a retreat, I often find myself waking up between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, using the bathroom, and then walking the expansive property as a meditation to clear my head and get a very early start to the day. This had been my routine for the first 3 nights, but on the 4th night, I didn't wake up at my usual time. Instead, I woke up suddenly and instinctively reached for my phone, only to see that it was exactly 5 o'clock a.m. on the dot. Nothing had disturbed me in any way. There were no sounds and no movement. I just naturally woke up. The area where I was camping was remote, with the nearest tent about 30 feet away, and there was absolute silence. Feeling fully awake and rested, I sat up and was putting on my shoes to start the day when I noticed a blue pulsing light outside my tent. I had placed 2 bollard-style LED lights outside to help me navigate at night without tripping, but one of them had been unreliable, sometimes turning off for no apparent reason. I assumed it was shorting out, but what struck me as odd was that the light was flashing blue instead of the warm white glow it was supposed to emit. I unzipped my tent to get a better look and saw a small spherical object only about 6 inches in diameter resting on the ground just to the left of the bollard light, no more than about 6 feet from where I was sitting. It pulsed off and on several times and had this stunning ethereal blue glow to it, almost like there was an atmosphere around it. For a brief moment, I remember thinking it looked remarkably like a tiny blue planet, complete with a cloud layer around it, just sitting right there outside my tent. I really had no idea what I was even looking at. Almost as soon as I could start thinking about what this object might be, it suddenly lifted upward and shot off to the northeast at a roughly 30-degree angle, moving so fast that it left a faint blue trail behind it. There was no way it could have been any kind of firefly or living creature. It was too large and moved at an impossible speed. For most of the morning, I found myself searching the sky, but it was gone, and that was the end of that particular encounter. This wasn't the first time that something like that has happened to me, though. I don't know why, but throughout my life, I've had multiple experiences like it, including one that involved my ex-wife. One night as we were going to sleep, I got into our bed, then according to her, I stared at the ceiling for about 5 minutes and suddenly got up, then walked barefoot out the back door and disappeared. Not long after I walked out, she says she saw a blinding blue flash of light outside. Then about a half hour after that, I guess I returned to bed. Almost an hour had gone by in total, but to me, no time had passed. My last memory was lying in bed, looking up at the ceiling, then rolling over to go to sleep. When she asked me where I had been, I was incredulous. According to me, I had only been in bed for 5 minutes. When she told me I had been gone for an hour, I thought she was either joking or mistaken, but I checked my feet and I saw that they were in fact dirty. There was even dirt inside the bed itself, so as weird as it was, I believed her. Years after that, I was also strangely present during the now famous Phoenix Lights in March of 1997. A friend and I had been repairing an air conditioning system on a roof one night, and it had been in the upper 80s that day, so doing a lot of the work after dark helped to beat the heat. As I was handing my friend tools and Freon, I happened to look up and saw the massive black triangular object that literally thousands of other Phoenix residents saw. The two of us watched it move slowly above us, floating at an altitude that couldn't have been more than 500 feet. What stood out to me about that sighting wasn't just its shape or its unnervingly slow movement, it was the way it seemed to consume all the light around it. Looking directly at it, I couldn't see a single star behind it, yet I could still see the stars around its edges. It was as if the object was either blocking them out or somehow absorbing the light into itself. It was an incredible thing to see, and I can't believe I was actually there to witness it. There have been other sightings and phenomena here and there, but now that I've gotten older, I don't really get alarmed or scared by them. I now firmly believe that something bigger is on the verge of revealing itself. Where these things come from, who controls them, or what their intentions are, I have no idea. If anyone does know, it's likely only a select and elite group of people. Personally, I don't fear any of it, and I don't believe we have anything to fear from them. If by some chance they are from another world, or even another time or dimension like some people think, the technology that brought them here far surpasses anything we have in our arsenal. I feel like if their intent were hostile, they could effortlessly wipe us out. The fact that they haven't suggests something else entirely, and that's actually very exciting to me.